Monday to everybody. We are coming to you live from the beautiful state of Louisiana in the city of New Orleans at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We're on Roku, we're on Rumble, we're on Facebook, and we are on YouTube. We have one heck of a show tonight. We're going to thank our sponsors, Carnation and Preston. This is such a cool show. Our network people have said we don't have to identify at the hour, so we get to run it full through. I'm going straight to you now. Let's go.
Thank you, Dolly. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us on episode 94 of The Lightgate. I'm your host, Preston Dennett. My lovely co-host is Dolly Safran. We have two amazing guests tonight. So excited, Michael Schratt and James Goodall. We're going to get right to it pretty quick, but I do just want to say a very quick hi to all you folks here. It's because of you we do this show. So thank you very much for joining us. All super chats are incredibly, what's the word I want to say?
Encouraging.
Appreciated.
Encouraging.
So thank you, namaste. Thank you. In my opinion, you guys really help us out quite a bit. Sonny Burnett, you guys are amazing. Dana Matthews, really thank you. Thank you so much, Louise. And yeah, you guys, I see all you regulars here. Really would love to spend some time saying hello to you all, but our show is so monumental that I'm just going to pop up what I can here real quick and get to our show because it's amazing what we have planned today. Michael Schratt has got a PowerPoint presentation ready. James Goodall has got his knowledge ready. And we are going to just stand by and try to participate when we can. But really, it's going to be them leading the show tonight. But for those of you who have not heard about them, where have you been? These guys are superstars in the field. So I will just briefly introduce them. Michael Schratt is a private pilot, military aerospace historian, longtime UFO researcher, draftsman, an expert on classified black projects and UFO crash retrievals and the government cover-up. He's the author of Dark Files, A Pictorial History of Lost, Forgotten, and Obscure UFO Encounters. You should have seen him on our previous show where he titled his presentation, The Price is Wrong. It was great. If you get a chance, check that one out. It was amazing. We love Michael. His shows always rise up to the number one in our rankings, as does our next guest, who has actually only been on once before. So we're very happy to welcome him back. This is new for us. We're doing essentially a panel. But our next guest is James C. Goodall. He's a published author with 27, count them, 27 books in print. He's a former docent at Kitt Peak National Observatory, former associate curator at Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum, former restoration manager on the MOF's de Havilland Comet Mk4C at the Museum of Flight, and a former master sergeant at the United States Air Force. He is a recognized authority both on low observable aircraft such as the F-117 and the B-2A, the Lockheed Twins, F-22 and F-35, and the Lockheed Skunk Works family of Blackbirds, and the U.S. Navy's fleets of modern-day fast attack and ballistic missile submarines. That is a mouthful. He's been photographing and writing about spooky military aircraft, naval ships, and submarines for the past 35 years. His latest book is 75 Years of the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, which was published by Osprey in 2021. You can check out more about them in the show description. There are links there, but let's just bring them on because we have an amazing show for you tonight.
We have an issue.
Michael disappeared.
Yeah, wait for him to come back. Michael, if you can hear us, show back up. Oh my God. He just went blip and he just...
Well,
hi, Jim. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm delighted to be here. And we're talking about subject matter that I hold near and dear to my heart. Michael Schratt is the best there is in what he does. No one presents UFO retrieval and sightings better than Michael.
I agree.
And he's like my. He's like a part of me in a way. he has the same obsession and passions that I have. And it's one of the very few people out there on the planet that have the same drive that he does. But I'm honored to be his friend, and he's like my kid.
Amazing.
And I can't say enough positive things about Michael. So
yeah, he's only. I mean, there's a handful of researchers out there I respect. He's absolutely one of them. I'm really glad to see his growing popularity, because so many people are pushing an agenda or speculating wildly. He's a facts-only guy,
Right?
Or feeding the link straight from the sewage treatment plant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm going to go off air for a minute. I'm giving him a call to see what's going on. Okay, I'll be right.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm pleased to. I'm delighted to be Michael's friend. We go back over 30 years, and the only correction I can make on the intro, I've been snooping on the government for 45 years versus 35. So
Wow.
actually, it's probably longer than that. But well over 2/3 of my adult life, I have been snooping on the government.
So how did you meet Michael?
He contacted me. This is back in the early 80s or late 70s. He was doing something, and he got hold of me, and we just sort of linked up. He lived, at the time he was living in Chicago, and I didn't meet him in person until probably about 10 or 12 years ago. But we have been very, very close. He thinks his thought processes and his passions are virtually identical to mine. Mine go a little bit farther because I've been at it a lot longer. And not, but I'm into low observables and things that go bump in the night. And low observables, the first operational low observable military hardware was submarines. And everybody said, well, why are you picking submarines? I said, they're black, they're stealth, and they're deadly.
Right.
And when they're at work, no one sees them.
Right.
And if you happen to see a submarine, it's usually about 2 miles offshore as it's going or coming into Bremerton or Hood Canal or one of the other naval bases. And you only see the top 5 or 6 feet of the hull. And you have a 43-foot diameter hull on the big ones.
Yeah.
They're 560 feet long. These are the ballistic missile submarines. Those are the ones I know.
Like, how many people would something like that carry?
140. They weigh out at 18,000 tons submerged, and they're absolutely the quietest submarines in the Navy.
Yeah.
Now
they can also take out any. This is what amazes me. Do you remember hearing it's not a tale, it's a truth. There was a submarine that sunk near Hawaii with a full armed nuclear device aboard, and they were going to shoot it at Hawaii. And I'm not sure if it was the Germans or the Japanese that had it, but it sunk on its own and had a huge problem, and it went down, and it laid on the bottom for years and years and years until they found it. And it's not officially designated information that anybody can get their hands on, but that is an actual true thing. And I know 2 people in the military who have told me it's absolutely true.
When I was at the Pacific Aviation Museum in Pearl Harbor, and the idiots renamed it the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum.
Yeah.
They had recovered a sunken Japanese.
That's it. Yeah.
It was a mini sub, but I think it was in 1,700 feet of water. And they actually, I believe they actually recovered it. But I know there was another one in the North Pacific that we did recover. They said that we didn't, but I know that we did. And the Glomar Explorer picked that one up.
Yeah.
And it had at least 3 nuclear weapons on board. Yeah. And I do understand that we detonated at least one of them at the Nevada test site.
I believe you. Yeah.
Dolly, so any word from Michael?
Yes, he unfortunately he was suddenly taken out. He had no control over it, and then his internet suddenly disappeared. So he's rebooting his entire system. He's trying to bring it back up, and as soon as he gets done doing that, he will be back on.
So so much for technology in today's world, right? Right.
All right. Just want to make sure he's living and good.
Yeah.
'Cause that was
Yeah. So so my passion has always been. Now I've been at the fence line at Area 51 and at Tonopah Test Range. They're in fairly close proximity. They're about 80 miles apart, and I've been there, over 80 different times over the last 40 years.
wow.
I started going there in the early 80s, driving through the area just because there's so much red flag stuff going on. And I can remember actually going into the Little Alien the very first time.
Yeah.
And it was in 1987. And I believe it was still called the Rachel Bar and Grill. And then they changed it to the Little Alien. And I've known Joe and Pat Travis since then. Joe passed away, I think in the 90s sometime. But I helped through my dear friend Stu Brown, who was the senior technical editor of Popular Science. In March of 1964, we did an article. He did most of the article, and it was viewed, is the largest circulation of a Popular Science article in the history of the publisher.
Holy smokes.
And 6 million people read the article. And it's I think for a monthly publication, it's probably a record.
That is
Very good.
Yeah.
Right.
But,
Wow.
Yeah. And the other thing we have here is, our government. I mean, they're supposed to work for us, but we can see by what Elon's uncovered so far that is not necessarily so.
Correct.
But they have been. One of the reasons I became successful in digging up stuff on the Blackbird and then on the F-117 and the B-2 and then other stuff in Area 51, in 1968, it's a long time ago, it's almost 60 years, I sent letters to CIA, to Air Force, to Lockheed, to DOD, to the president, asking for 8x10 color glossies of a Blackbird in the sky. I wanted... And I was, back then it was $7 an image, and I wanted to, get at least 10. And their official policy was not to cooperate. So because they didn't cooperate, I started digging. The more I dug, the more I found out. The more I found out, the deeper I dug. And over the course of the last 60 years, I became the world's authority on the history and development of the Lockheed Blackbirds. And because of my time out in the desert, I was the first non-DOD, non-Lockheed person or agency person to photograph the F-117.
Wow.
So that turned out to be good news that they didn't cooperate, ultimately.
Right, absolutely. I mean, if 1968, if they had sent me when I wanted to, I would be retired now because of my age, but I would probably be, working for some technical company of some sort. In sales. And but that wasn't my destiny. My destiny was to be a pain in the ass to the government. And with that, I have done a really, really good job. I mean, I co-authored my very first book that I ever did with Bill Sweetman. Mm-hmm. Bill Sweetman is now with Northrop Grumman, but before that he was with Interavia, and then he was with Aviation Week. And we go back 40 or 50 years. I remember the first time I interviewed him, he just got married to Pat, and they were living in Walnut Creek, California. And I have family in the East Bay, so we went and had lunch. And over the years, then we finally decided, since I had so much information on the F-117, that it would be let's do a book. Everybody says, let's do a book. So I did. And we sold 67,000 copies, which tickled the hell out of me. And timing was great because I was going through a nasty divorce and I was, in essence, homeless.
Oh my goodness.
Without a job.
Which book was that?
That was my the very first book on the F-117. It was from motor books, and it was just called F-117.
Oh, all right.
And if you look on my page that has all my book covers, I think it's right in the middle below the hardbound books. But that's what started me. I hated term papers. I hated writing. I didn't want to have anything to do with putting something together. But I was drawn to it because everybody said, "Hey, you're the only one who can do it. You have more stuff than anybody." And then when it came to the Blackbird, when Testers was going to do their big 1/4-inch SR-71, 1/48 scale, they contacted the Air Force Museum to do some dimensions on the YF-12 because the SR hadn't been sent to the museums yet. And Dave Menard, who was one of the head archivists there in research, said the guy you got to get a hold of is Jim Goodall. So I get this from a guy named John Andrews, and we immediately clicked. And one thing led to another, and he had his offices in San Diego. And he said, I got a dear friend who lives in Las Vegas that you got to meet. He's an incredible person. Okay, the bottom book, the Lockheed F-117, the operation and development of the stealth fighter. That was my very first book, and it sold 67,000 copies. Now, up at the very top in the middle, it says the Lockheed Skunk Works. That is a 5.5 pound, not a 500, a 5.5 pound book. It's hardbound, and I believe it's on its 5th printing.
Wow, that ain't bad.
Which is amazing since it's a $70 book.
Huh.
And it just tickles the heck out of me. My SR-71 Blackbird book is, according to guys who, Don Emmons, I was a pain in the butt to Don. And every time he'd hear my name, he would just want to just spit. And but when this book came out, I sent him a copy of it, and I got an email from him. And unfortunately, somehow I got erased. And he says, I thought it was being just another one of those Blackbird books, but it isn't. He said, you have stuff in there I haven't seen, and I have it in my shrine. He says, I have it in there on a table with
Here we go.
Blackbird stuff. Pardon?
No,
Oh, no, that's you.
Sorry.
Yeah. So is Michael on yet?
I have a question. I'm really interested in people hearing this. So, of all the things that you know about the Blackbird, do you know what makes it so stealthy? In other words, how is it harder to identify this while it's in the air? What's the technology for that? Do you know? Yeah,
it's called iron particles that absorbs the radar return. Now, if you look at the Blackbird, if you go to a museum and you see these pie panels are composite, and they're made with a nasty material that's not very popular. That's why they didn't cut them up. There's about 4,000 pounds of asbestos in any Blackbird, but it's all encapsulated.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of it's encapsulated into those triangles that go, they're around the whole airplane, the leading edge, the trailing edge on the chines, the rudders are plastic. And that, but what's impregnated in that plastic are a combination of a number of different things, but the primary thing are iron particles. And what that does when the microwave energy from a hostile radar hits the triangle path, the beam goes in and has no way to get out,
right?
Because of the shape of the triangle, and the pieces absorb the radiated energy and reduces the radar cross section significantly. Now, before stealth was a common word in the news and whatever, the SR-71, actually the CIA version of the Blackbird, the A-12, which is the airplane I worked on, it had a radar cross section of less than 22 square inches. So we're looking at something this big. A B-52, you all know what a B-52 is, an 8-inch strategic,
The bomber. Yeah.
bomber. It has a radar cross-section of 200 square feet. It's huge. I mean, like,
Miss it. Yeah. It'll be pinging everywhere. Yeah.
and then as stealth progressed and our computing technology allowed it for us to design an F-117 to know how the radar returns are reflected. With the F-22, the F-35, the B-2, now the B-20, the B-21 radar, the airplane that has the smallest radar cross-section is still the F-117. A bumblebee, a honeybee has a larger radar cross-section than the F-117. Now, wait,
radar can detect a bumblebee?
Well,
Yes.
something
Radar
that's
can detect the bumblebee. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
wait a minute.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
almost there. The switch. Hang on. There he is. Okay. Hi, Michael.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second you were bringing us on, my internet completely went out. I don't know what happened. So
Yeah, aliens.
I don't know about
Very
that.
No, I blame the government.
Yeah,
very could be on this
aliens.
one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Could be.
So I've been keeping him busy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Out of a cat.
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
I've never run out of words. So,
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good talent. All right, we were worried, Michael. So glad to see you here. Whenever you're ready to start, we're good to go.
All right, so let's see if we can go here. Share screen, so window here, share. Okay, so you guys are seeing this, right?
I'm adding you to it. That's
Yes,
right.
we are.
All right, good.
yeah, there we go.
All right, so I think I'm gonna just leave it like this right now. And you're seeing this full screen, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, almost, but
Yes.
it's good enough.
Pretty
Yeah.
much. Yep.
It's good enough. Okay, that's fine. All right, so the title of this presentation is Super Secret Aircraft UFO Magical Mystery Tour with, I guess, me and Jim Goodall.
Ta-da.
That's the whole thing. So, Dolly, you said that we could be allowed to talk about anything, right?
Yes, you have full permission. Go for it.
We got full permission.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, we got full permission. That's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, I hope you didn't think I came all this way and not have anything prepared for you guys. I mean,
I
know
never
always
doubted it for a minute.
prepared.
I knew you were coming with it. I
All
knew.
right. Let me get rid of this
Yeah,
banner.
yeah. All right, so let's continue here. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to hit Jim with some concepts that he's familiar with. I want to bounce it off you, Jim, and then get your thoughts and reactions, kind of like how we always do here. And why don't we go ahead and start here? So, Jim, please discuss the sequence of events that led to the shoot down of the U-2 spy plane on May 1st, 1960.
Gary Powers.
Yeah, I had
Yep.
and I had the pleasure of actually. I had 5 years active duty. I was out 10 years, and I joined the Minnesota Air Guard. And one of the recruiters was named D. Powers. I said, and I jokingly said, "You're not in any relationship to Francis Gary Powers, are you?" He said, "Yeah, he's my dad." So,
Nice.
but I knew Gary Powers' wife. I met Frank Jr. And what happened? The way he got shot down, the U-2 started overflying in 1956, and because the Russians, or actually the Soviet Union, as they were called back then, would not agree to Operation Open Skies. In other words, we would allow the Russians to overfly our sensitive military installations with photographic aircraft, and we do the same for theirs. And Khrushchev was adamant that that wasn't going to happen. So we needed a way to verify, and so what brought that on was the development of what became the Dragon Lady or the U-2. And they were flying U-2As out of Peshawar. Is it Pakistan? Yeah, I think it's Pakistan. And their flight was to take off from Peshawar, fly over the Soviet Union, all their critical sites, and then land in Norway. And on this one particular day, they found something wrong with the U-2. The high altitude restart system had been sabotaged. So normally the pilot goes with the airplane, but Powers said that he was fully briefed on the mission and to bring in another, a different pilot with a different airplane. You'd have to go through this, through the same stuff again, and it's time critical. Says, I'll fly it. So they brought in another. They had multiple U-2s there. He took off. Everything's going normal. He's over Central Soviet Union, heading towards their rocket test facility.
Okay. And
he has a flame out. The engine flames out. He tries the high altitude restart system, which was actually, they would load up liquid hydrogen in a small dewar, and then they would get through the engine or whatever to heat it up, turn it to a gas, and that's what would help relight the engine. But for whatever reason, and it turns out there was sabotage, but for whatever reason at the time he didn't know, but he had to drop down in altitude where the air is thicker. He's at 70,000 feet. That was the maximum altitude for the U-2A. And it's not that much higher for the U-2R or the U-2S either, because the Blackbird can go higher because it's being pushed up there with twin J-58s. But Powers realized that he had to drop down in altitude, so he did. He went down at about 30,000 feet, was able to relight the engine. He's on his way up, and a SAM, and they're firing everything at him. A SAM blows up behind him, didn't hit him, but behind him, and the overpressure, since his elevators were in the up position, the overpressure broke the elevators on the horizontal tail. And he lost control of the airplane, and one of the wings broke off. So he's twirling like this. In the early U-2s, there were no ejection seats.
So Jim, was the vertical stabilizer still in place? Vertical stabilizer was still in place? Yeah,
it was just one wing broke off, and the elevators were torn off of the U-2. So Powers opens the canopy. It's a side opening canopy, and it's going around pretty fast. He unbuckles his harness. He's thrown out of the airplane, but he's still attached to the airplane with his comm gear and his oxygen hose. So he had to pull himself back into the airplane, grab hold of himself, pull him in, disconnect the stuff, and then let go.
Oh my God.
And he said the scariest part wasn't being hit by the overpressure of a SAM or having to be pulled back, pull himself back into the airplane so he can release himself. He landed in the middle of a field, and this Russian farmer thought he was an alien and almost ran him through with his pitchfork.
Oh my God.
And that was he said that was really the worst part of the whole thing, except for his 15 months in prison. Yeah. But it was with that, there was a cessation of all manned overflights, and part of the terms and condition of Powers' release was the spy swap, and the cessation of all manned overflights over the Soviet Union and its satellites, which would have been the Warsaw Pact and China. But
this is why you're the best, Jim. This is why you're the best.
Oh, okay. I mean, this came to me from Powers' roommate in Peshawar, and he's the one who actually talked to him. Went to Moscow in the Soviet Union and sat down with Powers prior to his release. So he's the one who told me exactly what had happened to Francis Gary Powers. So
interesting. Okay, excellent, excellent.
And
All
what's
right,
amazing, what's amazing,
though,
that airplane is, I mean, the U-2s are still flying. It's a different version, but they're still flying today. All right, we have the Blackbird.
Jim, please talk about the records that the Blackbird set, and then please discuss the gentleman who's holding the placard, and then 2 over from that person. Please discuss how these 2 gentlemen affected your life.
Well, in the three things down is a sign, SR-71, 9th SRW Beale. That's Kelly Johnson holding the sign. The second guy from the end of that in that same photo is that's Ben Rich.
That's right.
Wow.
Make sure, it's Ben Rich.
Yep.
And then and I didn't know D.O. Wood at all. I knew of him, but I didn't know him personally. But I'm going to be 80 next month. And when I was 18 years old, so that's a long time ago, it was just before my 19th birthday, I was in the ramp at Edwards Air Force Base. I was TDY there from Denver, Colorado, Larry Air Force Base. And I was there to support 3 programs for Category 1 testing. It was a ground-based telemetry guy. YC-141, the XP-70, at the time, a classified program, which turned out to be the Blackbird. So that's when my passion started. Again, in 1968, if they had honored my request for some photos, I would have been happy. That would have been the end of me. There would be no in the future, 60 years later or 50 years later, there'd be no Jim Goodall on a
that was podcast. The best thing that ever happened to you. That was the best thing that ever happened to you.
Seeing the Blackbird on March 10th, 1964 at 3:15 in the afternoon, I can visualize it like it happened yesterday. Literally affected my entire life. It changed my entire life. And I made it a point when I was turned down, I started tracking people down. And this was before the internet. So either you had to be able to find a phone number with somebody or an address, get in an airplane or get in a car and go visit them. Fortunately, most of them were in California. And at the time I was living in LA. So that was fairly easy to start. But then I moved to Minnesota, where I spent a good portion of my adult life. And
okay, so Jim, please tell us what was so super secret classified about the D-21 drone and how it compared to the classification of the atomic bomb during World War II.
Well, when Francis Gary Powers was shot down over the former Soviet Union, part of the terms and conditions of his release is the cessation of all manned, quote, manned, overflights of the Soviet Union. So the CIA still needed a way to keep track of what they were doing with nuclear weapons testing and such. That they developed a program, and the code name was Tagboard. Mm-hmm. And they developed a high-speed, low-observable unmanned drone, and it was called Tagboard, but within Lockheed and the agency, they gave it the designation as D-21. The thing about the D-21 being built, at the time it was being built and the time it was operational, which was only about 4 years, it was more classified than the Manhattan Project.
Oh, that I find amazing. That's great.
Yeah, wow. And Kelly Johnson, scratched out on a piece of paper to Bob Murphy, and Murph was in charge of manufacturing at Lockheed at the Skunk Works, and it was his job to take the drawing that Kelly had put together, refine it, and make this an operational airplane. And they were going to use another neighbor of Lockheed's that they'd used in the past, Marquardt. Marquardt made ramjets. I think the biggest customer was Boeing when they had built the was it CMI 99. It was I can't remember the program name, but it was an air defense weapon. It was a Mach 3 plus, and it carried a nuclear warhead. But that would make for really nastiness if they were going to use it, because it would blow up everything, and it'll radiate most everybody out there. So this thing was designed to overfly denied airspace. We couldn't overfly Russia, we couldn't overfly the Soviet Union, same thing, or China, and they needed a way to do it. So they developed the D-21 drone. Initially, it was launched on a mother Blackbird. They built 2 of them, and they referred to as the M21s. On the 4th separation test, where they go up, you're flying and you head up and launch it that way. You only had about 6 inches in either side of the inward canted tails to the wings of the D-21. First 3 launches were a 0.9 G arc to help with the separation of the drone. The drone weighs about 10,000 pounds.
Wow.
And
I want to know who was controlling that thing. Because at the time, the technology, most people around here wouldn't understand how they did it. I want to know.
It was time and distance. That's all it was. And it was internal to the drone.
Okay.
They had to know where they're launching from, and they had an INS platform, inside the mother airplane. And then, but they actually operationally, they ended up launching it from a B-52. But on 3 launches, they went on a 0.9 G arc. And the separation was successful. There's video on that. You can go to YouTube and say D-21 crash into mother airplane or D-21. That you'll find that on YouTube.
Yeah, I got you covered here. Don't worry about it. I got you covered here. Just continue on.
Yeah. So after the 3rd successful separation launch, the drones didn't necessarily perform flawlessly, but the testing was to test separation. Well, after the 3rd launch, Kelly Johnson called in his people on the drone program, and they said, okay, I called him Bill Park, who was the chief pilot at the time and piloted all 4 drone launches from the mother Blackbird. And he had Bill Park in there say, okay, I got a question. In your opinion, do you believe a line pilot, someone we just picked out of the Air Force, would have the ability to maintain a 0.9 G arc at 80,000 feet at Mach 3 over hostile airspace? And Bill started going into this long dissertation. This came directly from Bill when I interviewed him. And he goes in and he's thinking this and that. And finally, Kelly says, damn it. I said, I want a yes or no answer. So Bill starts going in and thinking to himself, not saying anything. And finally, he said, no. And Kelly says, okay, on the next launch, which was on the 30th of July, 1966, he was to launch the first time at straight and level. And what happened was the drone launched. As it went through the bow wake, it had an asymmetrical unstart where you lose half of the flame, the flame holder.
I got to move forward. Get this here.
Yeah. And it crashed into right at the 715 splice. That's where the wings come and the body and the fuselage starts. It hit that, and that's on video, just the initial collision. And initially, Bill thought that because there was a massive shift in the aft center of gravity at 1G, that he had to pull his stick back. And he said as he pulls his stick back, all of a sudden things started going by him this way. And that was not a good sign.
No.
So he realizes that he's had a catastrophic explosion and mid-air collision in the airplane. And they're still in the forward fuselage, and it's tumbling and twirling. And Bill Park told me that his policy was, I'll stay in the airplane until it's safer not to be in the airplane.
Right.
So they wrote it down.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Really quickly, Jim. What made Bill Park, as you see here, what made him such a good test pilot?
He had cojones about so big. There's a young kid working for Elon Musk that has the same name. Big balls. No, he just knew how airplanes flew. He just he had that ability. He had the seat of his pants. Now this is the M21.
Yeah.
And it was referred to as the mother-daughter. It was MD21 D21. So it's just M/D21, and that's how it was and it was referred to as tag board. And this particular one is one of the very first, probably the first captive flight, because the drone has a frangible nose cone on it and a tail cone to make it more aerodynamic.
What's frangible? What does that mean?
Be like glass. You have an explosive charge in it, and you break it, it shatters.
Oh, okay.
Not to get off subject, Jim, but back to the U-2 real quick. Which wing broke off, and was it a silver aluminum U-2 or painted black?
No, they weren't painted black back then. If anything, they were painted gray. The U-2s, the agency U-2s that were flying out of North Base when I was at Edwards in '64 were painted a dark gray, a dark to medium gray.
Which wing?
The one that Gary Powers got shot down in, though. What was that? A silver bird?
It was it would be a silver bird, yes.
And then which wing blew off, the left or the right wing?
It'd have to be the right wing.
It was the right wing that blew off. Okay.
Else he wouldn't have been able to get out of the cockpit if it was the other wing.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Because he would be on the inside of the twirl on the opening.
Yeah. Okay.
So
all right,
that saved his butt.
Good.
Okay.
Let's talk about the test flight of HAV Blue on December 1st, 1977, and what two important people were present at the test flight, Jim?
I'm not sure. I forget.
You're not sure? Oh, yes, you know. Yes, you know. You know.
What? I know Kelly was probably there. Oh, now you're talking about the first flight of the A-12?
HAV Blue, as you see on the screen here. As you see on the screen here. Yeah.
It's camouflage. You can't see anything.
Yeah.
You see it, right, Jim? You see it.
Yeah, it's there.
Mm-hmm. It's there.
Have Blue. That's an interesting name.
Yeah, Have, and they program names have, if they, depending on what the first word is, the more classified the program, the smaller the the name. Yeah, when they developed the A-12 Blackbird, it was called Ox Cart. I mean, you can't have a less descriptive name if you tried. The code name for the F-117 was Senior Trend. And then you had Senior Prom, which was a stealth cruise missile, looked just like the F-117. And so senior programs have certain requirements, programs have certain requirements for the naming. It depends on the product, depends what they're trying to get. Now, I have to believe that when the first F-117 flew, Ben had to be there.
So yeah, in this one, it was definitely Kelly, who was semi-retired at the time, and then Ben was there. And then when the HAV Blue took off, Kelly turned to Ben and said, "Well, Ben, I guess you got your first aircraft."
Yeah, but Kelly also said, "You're not building that ugly POS in my skunk works, are you?"
That's true. That's true.
It's not a very pretty airplane. It's not a very pretty airplane. but it was it used a lot of off the shelf components. The landing gears were off a T-38. The flight control system, I believe, was off an F-16. The environmental control system was off out of a C-130. They weren't, and the 4-color paint scheme you see is actually 12 colors. So they use different shades of the same color depending on where they were at on the airplane. And the only reason they painted it that way was not for the general public not to be able to see it, but there's a lot of people at Area 51 that are not cleared to see all the programs. And that was the primary reason it was painted that way. Now, the other thing they did at Area 51, if there was something was going to fly and you weren't cleared to see it, they would put out a broadcast on the PA system and whatever says everybody that doesn't have a red or a green or a blue, whatever color, ban on their security badge has to go inside to a windowless building. And everybody knew where their location was if they had to go into a building. I mean, it's much like I was with Stu Brown, Bill Sweetman, Warren James, who's literally a rocket scientist, and myself. We're getting a tour of the Nevada test site, and we're at the Sedan crater. I'm standing at the edge of it, and this is that Operation Plowshare, where they dug a hole with one little bomb, with 400 feet deep, 1,300 feet wide. And I heard the radio go off on our escort. It says, "Do you have a Jim Goodall in your party?" Affirmative. Well, you have to take Mr. Goodall and his party to such and such location now. So we get back in the van. We head to the command post where they operate out of everything, and we're actually in the command center for all the nuclear weapons detonations over from the very first one. And
so, Jim, when they buried Have Blue Air Vehicle number 1 and Vehicle number 2, never to be seen by human eyes again, could anyone track down where these things are buried, or are they lost forever?
Well, they know about where they're at, and all they need would be a metal detector. But they're both buried at Area 51. Ken Dyson, when he had to bail out of Have Blue number 2, Have Blue had a massive fuel leak, and he had to eject out of the airplane, and it crashed. He got out okay, but the area they crashed, they weren't, the contractors weren't paying attention to it. And they actually built a road, went right over where the number 2 Have Blue is located. Number 1 Have Blue is they sort of know where it's at, but there's no real reason to dig it up. At one time, the Air Force Museum asked Lockheed, could you build up an empty shell on the inside, but could you build up a mock Have Blue? And they at the time, they seriously considered it.
Wow.
But last time I was at the Air Force Museum, and a buddy of mine's the operations manager there. They had just received the RCS model of the F-117 that was to be going on display. So he opened the box up so I could look into it, and pretty cool. But the building a mock-up of a Have Blue apparently didn't happen.
So they bury these so no one can look at them ever again? Is that the purpose?
Yes. Yep.
Or find a component that they aren't willing to admit they had.
Wow.
Period.
All right.
Right.
And just destroy them, or farm all the stuff.
It's the government's burn before reading syndrome.
All right.
Yep.
So
here we have Elko Daily Free Press, April 5th, 2001, secrets buried at Area 51. So in this article, they talk about Have Blues being burned up, all of the radar absorbent materials, basically the solvents, the 3-ring binders associated with the programs, the flight gear, all the flight suits associated with the program. So my question is, Jim, what other things did they burn in these burn pits?
They burned all the flight suits of the A-12 pilots.
Really?
Wow. If you needed a David Clark suit, a 1031 suit today, they're about $125,000 a piece. And every pilot, every A-12 pilot, and the same with SR-71 and U-2, they're issued two, a primary and a backup, and they swap them in and out.
No, wait, the flight suit costs $125,000.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's good. It's good to 120,000 feet.
You got to remember, they're so high up. It's not only.
What are they made out of? Gold?
No, it's like being in space. They're that high up. They have to have absolute control over their bodies in that thing.
At 85,000 feet, you have less than 0.4% of the atmosphere.
Right.
Plus it's 70 below zero.
That's right.
All right.
And if you didn't have, and the suit acts as like a capsule.
Yep.
That's its environment.
Right.
One of the concerns in the 50s was the B-58 Hustler was a Mach 2 bomber. And one of the things they were concerned about, if you have to eject at Mach 2, it's going to tear the guys apart. So Stanley Aviation at the time were stationed and were at Stapleton Airport in Denver, built the escape pods, the Stanley escape pods for the Air Force. The B-58 used them throughout their entire career, except for the TAs, the TBs, I should say, which were the trainers. Yeah. That was primarily for takeoff and landings and stuff, not necessarily.
I had $100,000 suit. There's no way I'd burn it. Never.
Yeah, but these are the same people who will give $260 million to George Soros to spend as he see fit.
They were cachet, and they didn't want that technology to go out with anybody. They had to bury it, otherwise the chances of it going out were high.
Well, and they also that would prove that there was something that they were working on that needed that kind of suit.
Right.
Now, this is the Northrop competition to the F-117. It was, and I asked. This is later on. It had nothing to do with that. But I did sit down with John Cashin, who is the father of the B-2, and also with Tacit Blue. And this thing was they never had a flying version of it. There wasn't an equivalent of Have Blue on this particular program, but they did some RCS testing on it. And it had a reasonably small radar cross section. Alan Brown, who was the director of engineering for the F-117, I sat down with him. I think they're all passed away now, but I sat down with him, and he said, we almost had to make up the qualifications for this going forward, because no one had really ever dealt with a low observable, something that didn't have a radar return or a insignificant radar return. So I said, most of our numbers were fudged because we really didn't know. But but apparently the Air Force felt confident enough in the numbers coming in from Have Blue, and that they were able to move forward with the F-117, which is the program code name is Senior Trend. There it is.
All right, Jim, please discuss the delivery of the final F-117 and what role did TTR and Holloman Air Force Base play in the program?
Well, the last delivery of the F-117, they were moving the operational base from Tonopah Test Range outside of the town of Tonopah, and about 85 miles from Area 51, and they moved the entire operation to Holloman Air Force Base in Alamogordo, New Mexico. And I've been there. I've done some shooting there. Everything moved out after a while. They had no airplanes there for a while in Holloman, and now I think they have an F-16 mission, but I don't know doing what. But what's really ironic. I went from really before the F-117s were operational, I'd photographed them there at the fence line, and now they're being relegated to museums. So I guess if you live long enough, you'll see some incredibly complex classified programs going by the wayside. And then we have the man himself, Kelly Johnson, who I met. He knows who I am. And I met him at it was Engineering Week at Honeywell Avionics Division. They call it the Ridgeway Division. They make all the military avionics for the military, primarily for the CIA and for Air Force. And he was talking about, the Blackbirds. And he said, you know about the agency bird, which is the A-12, and you know about the YF-12 interceptor. And of course, everybody knows about the SR-71, but I can't talk about the little bird. And there's some, and he used the full terms SOB. There's some SOB in San Diego, works for a toy company, is making a model of one. And then there's some guy up here in the Midwest who's written about it and has photos of it being built and everything else. He was referring to me.
So he didn't know you were in the audience, did he?
No. There was 800. I was invited by the director of engineering at Honeywell.
Okay.
So
this is 1983, right, Jim? 1983.
82 or 83. I have the promo. I have the announcement, whatever.
Oh, really?
Somewhere. So someday I'll find it.
What state? What state, Jim?
State of Minnesota. It was the prom
Minnesota.
center on University Avenue in St. Paul. It was February. Okay. I remember that.
Okay.
And it was when he was up there, he said, people said, well, do we have the ability to go faster than Mach 3.2? He said, today, now this is a long time ago, he said, today, we have the ability to go to Mach 4, Mach 6, Mach 8, Mach 12, or Mach 16 with a manned air-breathing platform. Speed costs money. How fast do you want to go?
Yeah, the implications of what that means is staggering.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
That was 80. That's 40 some odd years ago. He said we have the ability to, in a manned air-breathing platform to go faster than Mach 3.2.
So what's our capability today, do you think?
Well, let me quote Ben Rich. I talked to Ben once a quarter for almost over 20 years. At one time I thought it was 25 years, but it was just closer to 20 plus. And this is just before he died. He was at USC Medical Center, and we were reminiscing old friends, John Andrews being one of them. And he adored John. He really did. And I think because of my friendship with John Andrews, I sort of fell in with that group. But Ben was at UCLA. He was at the Graduate School for Aeronautical Engineers. It was their annual banquet. And he's the keynote speaker. And in his prepared text, he said, today, now this is over 30 years ago, he said, today, we have the ability to take ET home. Now, think about that statement. It's 30 years ago. 30 years ago. We have the ability to take ET home. But our government will not allow the technology to be made public. So fast forward to, it was December of 95, I think it was when Ben passed away, early January or something like that. I'm talking to Ben Rich. He's at USC Medical Center. He's dying of esophageal cancer. He had been breathing the fumes from the low observable solvents when they're building the F-117. It's incredibly toxic stuff. And we're just chatting away, and this is going on for about 45 minutes. And I can tell he's getting really tired, and we're near the end of the conversation. And Ben says, Jim, we have things out in the desert but he wasn't referring to Area 51. He said, we have things out in the desert that's 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. And he's referring to me, not just the general population.
Yeah.
And I can come up with a lot of ideas that are pretty outrageous. And he said that we have things out there that you can't even imagine. And then he put the kicker. And if you've seen movies like Star Wars or Star Trek, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. I said, Ben, you want to expand upon that? And he said, nope. And then he had the nerve to die on me about 10 days later. So,
Wow.
Yep.
So we would have learned a lot from that man. Because
absolutely.
there's things about this, and I would love to spit out right now, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut about it. But yeah, technology, when it overruns you, when you have all that technology and you know how it works and you think you can build it, applying it causes all kinds of problems. And the reason they didn't do it, and I'm going to let this one out of the bag, the reason they didn't do it is it started killing people right and left.
Well, I'm sure there was, especially if you were going to transport somebody.
Yeah.
That's where probably people died.
That's
Now
right.
I read a science article where they have actually transported objects from one place to another, and they were reassembled apparently correctly, I guess. I don't know, but that's something that that was actually published. So it wouldn't surprise me that part would be one of them they couldn't do. But the other thing is, when Ben says we have the ability to take ET home,
Right.
I'm getting a humming sound.
Means that they think that they've learned to light gate. In other words, they've learned to go interdimensional. But the problem with that is that you have to have the science to back that technology up, and they're not quite there. And that's when people started dying. And I'll tell you something: the Philadelphia experiment was the very first experiment in that openly light gating something. In other words, they were trying to go interdimensional. That's why guys ended up in the bulkheads. And they started, and they didn't care. They just kept going with it. This is all back engineered technology off of ET, period. Yeah. And yeah, they've learned a lot, but they can't go all the way home with ET. They can't cross the universe with it yet. And that's because there are components of this technology that they cannot duplicate yet. And that's why they had to stop. They're very far away from that, being totally there with it. But yeah, they've learned a lot. They know more than you could possibly imagine.
No, I can imagine a hell of a lot. Yeah, that's for sure.
So let's see if we can drill down on this. This is the commercial appeal, May 4th, 1986. So this is exactly the time frame you're talking about, Jim, according to what Kelly Johnson had mentioned. So aerospace planes taxi across drawing board. New hybrid engines may hurl commercial jets past Mach 5. So what I want to do is I want to blow up this chart here. We'll go to the next slide. And it says New York to Peking in 2 hours. So Jim, can you comment on the differences between a ramjet, a scramjet, and a turbojet?
Well, a turbojet has a lot of moving components, brings air in, it compresses it. There are multiple stages. And so you're squeezing it down so you have a high concentration of oxygen, and then it goes into a burner where it's ignited with a fuel of some sort. And the Blackbird is JP7, which is a triple distilled kerosene, but that's Jet A or JP4 or whatever. A ramjet has absolutely no moving parts. It is it's a tube with a compression cone in the front, a flame holder in the back, and a throated exhaust at the rear. And you usually you can't light a ramjet until you're above Mach 2. 1.5 is probably the absolute minimum that'll even start. So that's a ramjet. Now a scramjet is it's a supersonic ramjet is what it is. And you start out possibly with a air-breathing turbojet to get up to a certain speed. Say you go up to Mach 3. Let's say it's a Blackbird. Get up to Mach 3, Mach 3.2, 3.3. At that particular time, you're going fast enough for the supersonic combustion ramjet to work. And what happens is you actually transition by moving the inlet from going directly into the turbojet into going into this supersonic combustion ramjet. And again, once it's in ramjet mode, it has no moving parts, and you're limited to the thermodynamic stresses on the airframe or the airplane as far as top speed. But apparently, it's like Kelly said, speed costs money. How fast do you want to go? And,
so this is the plane dealer, December 7th, 1985. Lewis Center helps plan rocket plane. 12-minute New York to LA flights are foreseen. So again, 85 timeframe. That's within 2 years of Kelly's lecture in Minnesota. That's tracking with the data. Absolutely. We'll go on to the next slide here. And Jim, please comment on the X-30 and clarify the term "quote unquote" hypersonic loiter.
Okay, this was our entry into a potential Mach 3 plus supersonic airliner. The Concorde had beat out the Boeing and Lockheed SSTs, and now we're in a different time frame, and they needed a national aerospace plane. And they started developing this. It was going to be fueled by liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. It would take off, I believe, with conventional jet engines, and then transition over to above Mach 3 into.
So this is Mach 25. This is actually Mach 25. They're going here.
Yeah.
I have a big question. At what altitude?
150, 200,000 feet.
Yeah.
Okay. Minimal air. I mean, you're basically would be a rocket, but it used your scramjets to get up to that speed.
Go almost to the edge of space. That's it.
Yeah.
We'll continue on here. Okay, good. All right. So we have some evidence within the Bill Scott collection of something called the accelerator, which looks similar to the concepts that we've kind of seen here, almost like a large lifting body configuration, almost no wings. There is some evidence to indicate that these are solid billet aluminum wheels, because when you have a takeoff roll and a landing speed very high, you can't just use rubber wheels. So Jim, my question is, can you talk about the runway length at Area 51 and why it needs to be that long when you have a space shuttle that can land on either side and still have a mile in between? Why do we have such a long runway at Area 51?
Well, I called him Foxy. Bill Fox was the director of engineering at Area 51 for the A-12. He was on the Tiger team for D-21, and he worked on a bunch of other programs. And my mind just went blank. Oh, I hate that.
We're just talking about the runway length. Why you need such a long runway area.
And in my age, I have those senior moments where it'll come back to me. It's a 2-minute rule, as mine said. You'll remember it in 2 minutes. So I asked him, I said, the main runway they're using in Area 51 is 27,000 feet long. Why in the hell would you need something that long?
Right.
He said, if the maximum takeoff roll for a program, an aircraft, is 9,000 feet, that's how much runway you need to take off. If you have to abort I think it's V1, just as you start to rotate, you need twice that distance to stop. That's why the runway was 27,000 feet long.
That's great.
But they're also at 4,200 feet or 4,600 feet in altitude, because the thinner air does make for big difference as far as if you pop a chute, it's more effective at sea level than it is at 4,200 feet. But they have since abandoned the runway. They have X's all over it, and they built a new runway next to it. And then I believe that's a 13,000 foot runway, which is not unusual for a flight test area, because you don't know what you're going to test in the future. So
that makes me think it's got anti-grav.
Pardon?
It makes me think that they're using anti-grav technology on that thing.
Well, I just go around the mountain. Okay.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Dolly, because we have an interesting article here in Gung Ho, February 1988. And there was an anonymous author to this particular article that I always thought was interesting. He had the name Al Fricke. So, Jim, do you want to talk about Al Fricke?
Yeah, I'm Al Fricke. And
yes,
the reason, and what is interesting about the name, because we didn't have ways to garble a regular phone call going to an office or a home or whatever it is. We didn't have that capability back in the 1980s or even the 90s, as far as if I had to make a phone call to someone and it was urgent. So what they did, they set up some code names for Pratt & Whitney, for Honeywell, for Rosemont, and a few of the other major suppliers. If there was an incident, if there was something that was coming unglued on a program, and they needed a particular specialist to come to Area 51, they would call the person at home and said, I'm calling to tell you that Al Fricke is not feeling well and he won't be able to come to work tomorrow. So he's not going to be there. So I just wanted to let you know, and then hang up. So this guy knows that, hey, I got to fly out to Area 51 tomorrow. So he gets all packed up. And the funny thing about it, and there's a guy from Honeywell told me this, he got the Al Fricke call. And so the next day he's at Minneapolis, St. Paul International Airport. He's taking a flight to Atlanta. And when he's in Atlanta, he sees this guy he has that disease where he doesn't have any hair. He doesn't have eyebrows, doesn't have any hair. There's a name for it. I can't remember. Yeah. And he said, well, he's kind of unusual, but didn't think about it. So they never went straight to LA or to Burbank to go to Area 51. I mean, they would fly all over the country. So he takes a flight to Chicago and he's waiting for his next airplane, and he sees the same bald guy that he saw in Atlanta. So maybe he was going to Chicago, but it's no big thing. So he takes another flight. I don't know if he went to Denver or he went to Dallas or whatever. He sees the same guy. He's getting freaked out now. So he calls security. No, he doesn't call security yet because he's running out of time. So he ends up in LA, in Burbank. They stay at the same hotel or motel when they're being called in. They're under, so that people with a different name, prepaid. So he gets on the shuttle flight. He flies to Area 51. He goes into the south end of Area 51 where the A-12 Blackbirds were. And he was rushed to go do something, to look at something on the autopilot or whatever. And so he hadn't called security yet. And he climbs up the boarding ladder or the work ladder to look into the cockpit of the A-12. And there's some guy in there working, and he looks up, and it's the bald-headed guy. And Dave says, I was going to call security on you. Every time I saw you at 3 different places. And he says, well, I felt the same way. I called security. I says, I did call security on you.
So Jim, you are the author of this article. And I think it's going to be more impactful. Since you're the author, I think it's going to be more impactful if you read your own quotes that you got from these sources here. Could you just read your quote and then comment it and then move on to the next one, please?
We are flight testing vehicles that defy description. To compare them conceptually to the SR-71 would be like comparing Leonardo da Vinci's parachute to the space shuttle. Yeah. Air Force officer involved. Yeah, this is a bird colonel who told me this. We have things that are so far beyond comprehension, the average aviation authority has to be really alien to our way of thinking. And again, a full bird kernel. Let's put it this way. We have things flying out of the Nevada desert that would make George Lucas drool. That was my friend.
Can you comment on these statements, Jim? Can you comment on these?
Well, the bottom one was by Bill Fox. He's passed away, so I can use his name. And he had 35 years with the Skunk Works. And he was and he's just a cool guy. You'd see him. He was, he didn't look like a guy that would be working on some of the most incredible technology on the planet. But I asked him, and then when I was interviewing Dave Fruhoff, he's since passed away too. I'm living all these guys.
Okay.
And I asked him after during the interview, do you believe in UFOs? And he says, absolutely positively do exist. I said, do you want to expand upon that? He said, I thought he should say no, like most everybody else had said no. He said, sure. And he said it was a night operational mission out of Kadena, Okinawa. It's late 72, early 73. And it says we're at 78,000 feet at Mach 2.7, 3/4 moon off to the left. And they had already flown over their target, which was North Vietnam. And he gets a glint of something metallic or something reflective off to his right, mile or so away, and 5,000 or 6,000 feet above him. So he gets, he doesn't want to open up his visor because he's getting glinting from inside the cockpit instruments. So he looked out the side window to see if he could see a blank spot where there are no stars. And with the glinting of the cockpit lights, it wasn't going to work. And he didn't want to open up his visor. And so he contacted Kadena, Okinawa, where 9th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing Det 1 was operating SR-71s. He said, do we have another bird up? They said, no, you're up there by yourself. I said, okay, I'm going to go take a look. So he advances the throttle, never takes his eye off the object, and he's about a 10-degree bank as he's heading up towards him, keeping an eye on the object. But at the same time, his backseater said, hey, Dave, we have company. He said, yeah, I know. We're going to go take a look. So when they were about still 1,000 or so feet below this object and still a mile or so away, this thing took off at about a 30-degree angle of attack and left him in the dust. Dave said he lost contact or visual contact with it between 180 and 200,000 feet is what he estimates. And it left him at least Mach 12.
Yeah, so I think these are like bombshell statements here that need to be screen saved and snipping tools. So if anyone's watching this video live or later, feel free to snipping tool this. I mean, these are literally bombshell statements here. Here we've got this Air Force officer. He's talking about the SR-71, and then we're test flying vehicles that make the SR-71 look like Leonardo da Vinci's parachute. I mean, this is unbelievable. The implications of what this guy is talking about here are unbelievable. And then we have things that are very alien to our way of thinking. What was he trying to say there, Jim? What was he trying to say?
Well, we have little gray men running around. That's what he's trying to say.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Or little green men.
Somebody's trying to invade my computer right now. Hold on. I gotta make it stop. Or we'll lose the show. They're coming after me. Okay. All right. Yeah, we just got an alert. I got an alert. Listen.
I just wanted to stress these comments because I think they're bombshell. They are Rosetta Stone statements for anyone that's skeptical. We've got credible witnesses here talking about the level of technology that the general public is not aware of. We are light years ahead of anything you see at your local air show. This is all a construct. What they're talking about here is the tier 3, tier 4 silver bullets. These are the ace in the hole technologies that aren't talked about at all. Continuing on here very briefly, Jim, let's talk about the F-20, exactly what happened. This is Telegram Forum, December 1st, 1986. The Northrop Corporation spent 7 years and $1.2 billion developing its F-20 Tiger Shark jet fighter, but it never sold one. Recently, the firm announced it is scrapping the program. Jim, what really happened on the F-20 program?
Well, yeah, they actually one actually flew into Minneapolis with a brand new 757, and I talked to the pilot. It wasn't Chuck Yeager, but I met him years later. I think General Dynamics and Lockheed and McDonnell Douglas and Boeing and everybody who made fighter aircraft didn't really want to see this thing built. And I'm sure they really pressured Congress into not building it. And it was in midnight. It was 1986. They started developing it in 82.
Okay.
So, actually, probably before that. I don't have.
That's okay. We'll continue on here. The Press Tribune, November 22nd, 1989. Beale Air Force Base loses SR-71 spy plane. So now we're talking about closing down the Blackbird program. So I did a little bit of digging here. The Atlanta Constitution, March 11th, 1989. It says, bye-bye Blackbird. The Air Force announced last week that it was retiring its aging squadron of super-secret Lockheed-built SR-71 Blackbird spy planes, successor to the fabled U-2 because of defense budget priorities. Then they go on here. The plane still holds world records for jet-powered speed and altitude at 2,193 miles an hour at 85,000 feet. Officials estimate that clipping the Blackbird's wings will save $300 million annually. That is peanuts at the Pentagon. That's nothing. So what's actually going on here, Jim?
Larry Welsh was the deputy chief of staff, Air Force chief of staff under, I don't know, my mind just went blank. Jerry O'Malley. Jerry O'Malley was Air Force chief of staff. Jerry, when he was a major, he flew the first operational mission on SR-71 when they took over the mission of overflying North Vietnam from the A-12, the CIA operation. And he absolutely loved the program. He supported it completely. Larry Welsh was turned down to fly the Blackbird because he wasn't a good pilot. He was a good politician. That's how he made general officer, but he was not a good pilot. So when Jerry O'Malley was killed in a CT-39 crash in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, his wife was on board, his aide, plus the pilot. I think it was 5 people total. Upon his tragic death, Larry Welsh became Air Force Chief of Staff, and his first job, as he wanted to put it, was to gut the Blackbird community. He says, so we've been kissing your butts forever. You have your special orange flight suit, which are now banned from use. You may not wear them on base. If you're in active duty, you are not allowed to wear them off base. And they were delegated to flight test people there at Edwards primarily. And he was just being a dick.
Okay.
So he sent a memo out to everybody in the Strategic Air Command, which was the command that operated the SR-71 program, basically saying that under no circumstances will you get in trouble for saying anything negative you want to say about the Blackbirds. I'll applaud you for it. If you say anything positive about the program, I'm going to have your job. And I don't care if you're an E1 to an O10. the Blackbird is off limits for anything positive you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And he was
Jim.
he
Can
was
you comment? Go ahead. Go ahead.
And he was, and he said, I promise I will keep my word. Okay.
Can you comment very briefly on the tooling for the Blackbird? What happened to the tooling?
It was cut up and sold for $7 a pound by the Jimmy Carter administration.
How much did taxpayers pay for that originally?
Well, the A-12s, came before the SR-71. Right. And the first batch of A-12s, and there were 15 of them total, and 3 YF-12s, and in that 15 were the two M-21 mother drone launch airplanes. When the first airplane took off, Kelly commented, "There goes my $67 million baby," and he said it was probably the best spent $2 billion ever spent on an airplane program.
Okay.
So but the tooling, it was hard tooling. Today they don't need hard tooling. With lasers and everything else, they can build without. They can use soft tooling, so that reduces the manufacturing cost and the time frame to build something quite significantly.
Okay.
But that was.
We'll switch over to this real quick. N9M Flying Wing. Your comments on this, Jim? What actually took place? We have a seasoned test pilot here. He knows what he's doing. Why did this crash? What happened, Jim?
Well, it was made of wood primarily, and who knows? I mean, it could have been termites. I don't. You laugh. It's probably true. This airplane. It was at Plains of Fame where it flew out of. Right. A one-off, something this significant to the history of aviation. Build up a replica. Don't fly a real one. I mean, when he was still alive, Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft, wanted to fly. They called it Doris, I think was the name of the program. It was a FW-190, but it was a one of a kind. It had extended wings, and it actually was the plane that Paul Allen had was sort of a Frankenstein. It was made up from a couple different airplanes, and he was able to track down where the real pieces went, and was able to buy them and or rebuild them. Mm-hmm. And even though it would have been an incredibly exciting thing to see, the fact that it's the only one was you shouldn't fly it. They have, they're near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. They're restoring only one of 3 Northrop P-61 Black Widows, and they're going to fly it. And as beautiful of an airplane that is, I hope they don't, because there's just too few of them. And if they've been working on this thing for 20 years, and they've totally remanufactured the airplane, and it's gorgeous. I haven't heard anything recently about them, but they shouldn't fly stuff like that.
So I did a little digging on this N9M crash here. So I went to the NTSB, and this is their cover here, National Transportation Safety Board. This is October 24th, 2019. This is the airframe engine summary here. Here is the crash site. Gruesome scene. It's very sad. This actually crashed at a prison. You can see where the right engine impacted. I'm going to move on to the next slide here. This is what's left, Jim. This is what we have. Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So it's just so sad, some of these tragedies in aviation. So then I went over to the actual findings by the NTSB. Here's the 2 propellers. And then we'll go to the report, Aviation Investigation Final Report, NTSB, April 22nd, 2019, destroyed 1 fatal. And here they say, the National Transportation Safety Board determines the probable causes of this accident to be the pilot's loss of control for undetermined reasons. And that's all we get. That's all we get.
Yeah.
What could be his reason for losing control of the aircraft?
I'll give you a hint. You need to do your homework here. You ready? You need to go
Yeah.
back to the day. You need to know what the solar reports were and if we were having a CME at that day and what level it was at. In 2019, they were becoming significant then. And anything with certain types of digital controls, whatever, would be knocked out. And if he was up and he got hit by a CME, it would have taken control completely away from him and he would have gone down. You need to look up stuff like that because most of the stuff that blows up and you've got a pilot that knows better than anybody else how to fly something, you've got to look at what's incoming on our solar system. And that would be one of the number one reasons. And I'm going to tell you, 2019 was really hot. And I know that it was blowing stuff up all over the place. There was satellites going out of service. There was all kinds of things happening. And if that thing in March was up, and I know March was a busy time for that, that's why, period. And they don't want you to know the truth of that. Look it up.
Well,
That's your homework.
it's an interesting path to follow. I don't think anyone's gone down that route, but
that's because they don't want you to. I'm defying everybody. You go ahead and look it up and find out for yourself.
okay. Well, we can certainly do that.
Right.
Jim, can you talk a little bit about John Paterno, father of the stealth bomber? He died at 54. He was a young guy.
Yeah. No, I never met him. You know, I met Irv Wallen, of course, John Cashin, and I was trying to get with Jim. I can't remember his last name, but he's one of the three fathers of the B-2. And
Jim Canoe, right?
Yeah, that
Jim
was
Canoe.
him. Yeah.
Jim Canoe. Okay.
Yeah, I think is John Cashin gone?
I don't
Michael?
think so, but I haven't heard from him in a long time.
Yeah.
Jim, please comment on what happened when the B-2 stealth bomber first arrived at Whiteman Air Force Base, specifically what occurred overnight when they shut the doors on the $100 million temperature-controlled hangars.
Yeah, it was a young, I think it was a young captain was the maintenance officer, and they had gotten, the first B-2 had flown into Whiteman. It was a Spirit of, it was a Spirit of Missouri, and they immediately put it in a hangar, and they closed everything up. They locked the doors. They had guards at all, any entrance into the hangar. Next morning, they came in there very proud. They're going to show some VIPs. That the B-2, our first stealth bomber, and they opened up the door, turned the lights on, and everything that was alive in the hangar, birds, bugs, whatever, were dead on the floor or on top of the airplane. The radiating of the stealth adhesives used for the low observable coatings on the B-2 were enough to kill everything in the hangar.
Wow.
And if we'd been humans inside there, it would probably have the same effect, even though we're physically larger and probably more adapted to withstand some of the nuances of dying of poisoning from the solvents. But it was
what's changed now, Jim? What's changed now where they can actually bring the B-2s around inside hangars? Why is it different now than it was back then?
Because this went straight from the low observable coating going on, flying directly into a base and then going into an enclosed building. Once they've radiated all the fumes out of it, they're fine.
Then it's okay. All right.
Yeah.
Northrop Grumman B-21 Raider official rollout December 2nd, 2022. We're going to continue moving on here. And then if you take the Highway 14 north from Lancaster, Palmdale, and you head toward Edwards Air Force Base in Mojave, if you look off to the right, you're going to see this billboard that Northrop put up there. It's detectable until it's not. So, Jim, my question to you is this a belated designer leak? Are they trying to tell us something here in a stealth way? Are they trying to tell us something here?
No, what they're saying is when they're flying in peacetime and flying in our neck of the woods over the U.S., they have transponders on, and they probably have external things on them to make sure that they're picked up by collision avoidance radar.
Okay.
And when the B2, if you see a B2 flying, and you're say in a tanker or aircraft or whatever, but it's flying in formation, the split ailerons are open about 5 degrees. From 0 to 5, they have no effect on the control of the aircraft, but they open it up. So when they do have a movement, there's no delay from opening it up. And when they're flying, when they're going into combat, those things are closed, and there are no external antenna on the airplane, so they represent, and they turn the transponder off, so they have a very, very low radar cross section. They're unavoidable. So that
I'm thinking that there could be more going on with this little billboard here than we imagine here, because they say
I'm sure
until it's not. So obviously they're referring to stealth invisibility. That's what they're referring to. But could they be talking about optical invisibility as well? Is there more going on here? This is what I want to explore. So what is Northrop Grumman trying to tell us? Are they only referring to radar stealth? So if you start looking at the literature here, Popular Science, May 1997, invisible aircraft, daytime stealth for future fighters or bombers. This is back in 97. And you look at the technology of what they're doing here, and we'll move on to the next slide here. Disappearing Act, future aircraft such as Lockheed Martin's proposed Joint Strike Fighter might use visual stealth to blend into the sky. Sensors would measure the sky's brightness and hue, and electrochromic coatings applied over a white skin would change shade to match the background. So, Jim, are they using this on the B-21?
Well, they've been talking about using active camouflage for 30 years that I'm aware of, maybe even 40 years that I'm aware of.
They can't do that without graviton technology, graviton wave technology. So they have figured it out. I don't know how much electricity they can build up on one of those things. They have to have one hell of a battery system on it. But that's pure electrical ability right there. That's light technology, period.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of serious light technology. And they are using it. And yes, they are somewhat anti-grav because of that. And it's gravitational wave technology. You can build up a electrical, generate enough electricity to build up a wave, and it's gravimetric. In other words, it becomes gravitational. And you can emit it like ET does into emitters. And I'm looking at the components, the shape of it, and I can see where the batteries would be located. I can see where they might have an emitter, one set of emitters on it. And yeah, I think they're using it. I mean,
because they've been talking about it forever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, they've had the technology to back engineer from for a long time.
Yeah.
You know?
So switch gears to the F-35, $1 trillion train wreck, how the F-35 hollowed out the United States Air Force. F-16 play co-designer to speak in Burlington. And this is our very good friend, Pierre Spray here.
Yeah, we lost him 2 years ago, and he hated the F-35.
So poorly conceived that every plane purchased will be a detriment to national defense, both because of its poor design and because its high cost will drain resources from other Pentagon programs. So briefly, do you want to comment on Pierre Spray?
Well, I met him through Jim Stevenson, who is a mutual friend. He wrote the book, the $4 billion misunderstanding. It was on the Navy.
$5 billion, yeah.
$5 billion misunderstanding. It's it was the history of the program of the A-12, the Navy A-12. That was a Mac Air General Dynamics program, and he absolutely hated the F-35. He said there was nothing about it that was worth a damn. It's grossly overpriced. I mean, I saw the Iron Bird of the F-35 in 1989. Let me see, 90. Well, I mean, that's a long time ago. And it's still not fully mission. It's still not fully mission capable.
Wow.
Fort Worth Star Telegram, September 18th, 2008. At home as well as abroad, skepticism of F-35 persists. The latest dogfights took place in past week. A former Pentagon official involved in the development of the F-16, F-18, and A-10 aircraft in the 1970s said in an influential defense publication that, quote, the F-35 is a dog. Newspapers in Australia, where the government's plans to eventually buy F-35s are subject to intense political debate, reported that the planes were, quote unquote, clubbed like baby seals in computer simulated war game conducted by the U.S. Air Force. That doesn't sound too good.
And I mean, it's they should have bit the bullet, and they could have come out with a new F-22C. A B model would be a two-seater, or a D model would be a two-seater. So that's what they should have done instead of building this dinosaur. And that's what it is. Okay. I mean, it doesn't. The cost overruns are astronomical. The maintenance requirements for them are quite large. We actually have they're moving an F-20. They're moving F-35s into Davis-Monthan. I haven't gone to take a look at them yet.
Really? Is this true? Is this true? Oh my God, that's unbelievable. U.S. watchdog slams F-35 cost over. I can't believe they're sending there. Now here's where I'm taking a little bit of a leap here, but I think there's some paperwork to back it up. That's why I'm bringing this up to you here, Jim. Have we all been played for fools regarding the F-35? Did a certain aerospace contractor use the F-35 as a sacrificial lamb to cover the cost of its real capabilities? Is there something very significant and secret about the F-35 that Congress and the American people have not been informed about? So bottom line is, I'm just asking this as a question. Have we all been played for fools on the F-35? Is there something else going on here? Here you have President Donald J. Trump, the F-35 jet, which is almost like an invisible fighter. Then he went on to say, even if it's right next to it, it can't see it. It's very tough to beat a plane when you can't see it. Nobody has the equipment that we have. So what is Donald Trump talking about here?
Oh, that may be active camouflage, for one. Okay. And two, I have a buddy of mine who flew F-117s during Desert Storm. He flew wild weasels also in Vietnam. He said, I can't tell you, but the F-35 really isn't an airplane. I said, well, it sure looks like one. And I said, no, it's an information gathering node that is built into a very complex system.
Correct.
Everywhere it flies, it's sucking up data and it's transmitting it out to wherever it's going to, either
real-time loop. Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. So it's probably the equivalent of a AWACS type of aircraft that sucks in data, because it has I think there's over 80 sensors on that airplane. That's external. It doesn't affect the radar cross section of it, but it's stuff for picking up transmissions of some sort, whether they're electromagnetic or whether they're visible or whatever.
It can go invisible. It can go stealth on the ground, parked. I'm going to admit something. I'll admit it now. I've seen a picture of 8 of them on the ground in stealth mode, and you can't tell what the hell they are, and they're there. So
you
figure that one out.
I find that very interesting, Dolly, because of this part right here. It is the invisibility cloak depicted in the Lord of the Rings series strictly fantasy, or has the technology progressed to make it a reality and integrated into the 5th and 6th generation stealth aircraft? That's my question. And I'm only bringing this up because if you start doing the paperwork and the digging and the research and look at the technical trade publications, what you're going to find are things like this. the Cheshire Jet harnessing metamaterials to achieve an optical stealth capability.
Right.
So here we've got actual technical publications, Air Command and Staff College talking about invisible jets, optical stealth cloaking they're talking about. Now you see it, now you don't, blinding us with science, the next generation of stealth. Really quickly here, researchers examining ways to blur an aircraft's outline by using a recently created branch of nanotechnology known as metamaterials. That keeps popping up again.
Yeah,
Ordinary metals, plastics, and other materials are combined in a way that alters their response to light, heat, radio waves, and other forms of electromagnetic radiation. In particular, researchers discovered that metamaterials can bend light in ways that no naturally occurring material can do, even backward. It's the ability that could allow a coating of metamaterials to smear an airplane's outline. So is this what they're doing on the F-35 and the B-21? Is it possible? I think it is.
Yes.
I think so too. I don't think there's any question. They, you know, and they've been working on it for at least 50 years.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they would have some success, even if it was rudimentary. I mean, all you have to do is blur something, and if it's in the sky, and that's why they're painted the gray color they are.
No, they do it on the ground too. What I saw was in 2017. Just saying. Okay.
Okay.
And
I just like I say, it has capabilities that if you knew what the capabilities were of the F-35, you say, wow. Now, Pierre Sprague didn't say, wow, he had no use for it. And he was one of the, and he was probably the largest and the most prominent anti-F-35 person on the planet until he passed away. And
so this is from the Bill Scott collection, New Scientist, October 2000. I'm not going to read all this, but just the top part here. They're talking about plasma stealth, high voltage electrical charges being applied to aircraft here. They can reduce drag, repel shock waves, and make jet fighters vanish. Will plasma start an aerospace revolution, or are they just another mirage? Further on in this article, it says, but there are more clandestine applications. The way plasmas interact with radio waves around aircraft is causing more than a little excitement in the secret world of military aerospace research. Could they provide the ultimate invisibility shield for stealth aircraft? Other researchers have found that plasmas can dissipate shock waves from supersonic aircraft, stifling troublesome sonic booms. So now we're talking about plasma being applied to aircraft to essentially make them invisible, one, and then they conclude here talking about plasmas that reduce and eliminate the supersonic shock wave, so you no longer have a sonic boom. Jim, I think they've done it.
They're not telling you the whole truth about that. Plasma is not what that is not what's doing it. And we're going to go back to what I said earlier. They're using graviton wave technology. It's electrical, and it heats up like crazy and creates a plasma wave. And when they're up in space, you can see it because it's really bright. 27,000 degrees is a lot of plasma. When they come into the Earth's atmosphere, it starts to lower the amount, and it can change color with the atmosphere, whatever's floating around the particles. But plasma is an effect. It is not how they do it. It is graviton wave technology, and we're going straight into anti-grav. They can create an environment that pushes everything away. That's what's protecting them, the graviton wave technology. Plasma is a byproduct of that. And they're only telling you a teeny tiny bit of the truth. And the truth is that plasma is not what's doing it. It's graviton wave technology.
In the time,
Star will agree with me about that.
In the time we have remaining here, Jim, do you have any final thoughts to kind of bring this all together here?
No, just that the F-35 is a lot of people putting a lot of money into it, and I think if it was a piece of junk that a lot of people say it is, why are they selling them to everybody? Now, just because we're selling them to foreign countries, maybe that's a version A but our guys are flying, the Virgin Eye, which stands for invisibility. It's very possible. And who knows, we may have a kill switch in foreign purchased F-35s.
Mm-hmm.
That all we have to, if all of a sudden they become an adversary, oh my gosh, that's going to cause problems. You just flip a switch and all of a sudden
everybody drops out of the sky.
Yeah. And it's an electric airplane. I mean,
it's a fully integrated system. That's what it is.
Yeah, and that's basically, they're not calling it an airplane. I mean, that's what they're referring to it as, a fully integrated system, like Michael just said. It's and knowing Bob Lazar and being, kicking the can around in this community for a long time, I'm surprised that UFO technology has not been incorporated into things that the general public is aware of.
Yeah, you're not the only one, right?
Now, when I was at the Skunk Works for a book signing on my 75 years of the Lockheed Skunk Works, as we're heading over to the U2 operation, I asked Jeff Babion how much UFO alien technology is being utilized in Skunk Works programs. And he didn't look surprised. He didn't go, jump back, and he said, "None that I'm aware of." He said, and then he said, "But that doesn't mean something was built here before I got here. And my job is not to look in the past. I have your book for that. My job is to look to the future." And I thought that was a great comment. And he said, "Personally, I can't imagine why why would we be considered we're the only ones?" And this is the head of the Skunk Works.
Well, we're basically out of time, you guys.
Oh, damn. That was a fast 2 hours. It always is. Anytime I'm with Michael, it's always instantly fast. Yeah.
Yes. So how much did we miss? How far did you get?
55 of 172.
So you're going to come back? I really want you to look some of that stuff up I was telling you about. It's going to alter the way you...
We can certainly do that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also want you to look into the gravitonic wave technology because it is electric. And if you look up the physics of plasma is a byproduct. It is not going to solve anybody's problems. It is completely radiational. It'll burn you up and kill you. It is not what's keeping them afloat or doing that. It is graviton wave technology. And I'm tired of saying it out loud. Listen to what I'm telling you. It's real. And you all need to do some homework on that and really look into it. Electricity amplified is immensely powerful, and you can do all kinds of things with it. And gravity is electrical. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear it, but physics has proved it recently in the last year. They're finally admitting the truth of it. Catch up.
We're electrical.
Well,
Yes,
I'm going to bring the PowerPoint down because we are basically at the point where we can't do it anymore. But
okay, so
it's amazing, you guys.
Yeah, it is amazing, and you're damn good at what you do, Michael.
No one does it. No one does it better than Michael.
Yeah,
that's because I got Jim with me here. So
this is absolutely related to everything that's going on right now.
It is.
It is situation. So people need to know this information. It's very valuable.
Absolutely.
And
thank you.
And I heard somewhere that as far as UFO technology, it sounds like the current administration is seriously talking about declassifying it all.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
That'd be incredible.
I'm ready.
Yeah. So
I'm not going to panic. I think.
No. But if you would like us back for a three-peat, it won't. Hopefully, it won't happen like what happened to the Kansas City Chiefs. They got their clock cleaned, and I was cheering. I was cheering the whole way.
Oh my God!
You get a certain amount of arrogance, and I've won it 2 times in a row. This would be our 3rd time in a row. Well, not necessarily.
I know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight. We truly appreciate it. It's because of you guys we do this show. So thank you very much. Quick shout out to Namaste and all you other guys who helped donate with Super Chat, in my opinion. It really helps a lot. Sonny Burnett, thank you so much. Dana Matthews, you guys are amazing. Louise, Raul Melendez,
Thank
thank
you
you so
very
much. Luke Shanahan of the UFO Files group. Check out that Facebook group, you guys. It's one of the best ones out there. And yeah, sorry guys, we couldn't get to your questions. Hopefully we can have you both, Jim and Michael, back soon, and we can do
Sure.
part 2 and if
Yep.
necessary, part 3.
Yep, I want you guys to stay on with us so we can firm up a date for you to come back because he was only halfway through. Okay.
Okay.
All right, everybody, we were coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We're on Facebook, we're on Roku, we're on Rumble, and we are on YouTube. We love you all. I want you to have a wonderful, productive, happy, joyous week. And remember that we're here every Monday night, and we'll see you next Monday. Love y'all. Bye.
Mhm.